She didn't come to Dubai looking for love. She came for overtime pay. The city glowed with glass and gold, skyscrapers reflecting the blazing sun, luxury cars speeding by, and endless malls that seemed unreal. But behind the glitter, on quiet industrial streets, there were factories where lives moved like clockwork, controlled by rules Maria barely understood. This was where her story began, in a cake factory. Maria Alvarez grew up in a small coastal town in the Philippines, a place where opportunities were scarce and dreams often whispered themselves into the wind. Her father had worked overseas when she was a child, returning quieter, older than his years. Her mother sold food from a roadside stall, hands raw from labor, eyes tired but proud. Maria wanted more than survival. She wanted stability, a chance to send money home, a chance to change her life. When a recruitment agency offered a job in Dubai, promising legal contracts, steady pay, and accommodation, it seemed like a lifeline. She borrowed money from relatives, signed papers she barely understood, and boarded the plane, heart full of hope and determination. The recruiter repeated one rule endlessly: follow the rules and you'll be fine. Maria believed them. Arriving in Dubai was overwhelming. The heat hit her immediately. Highways looped endlessly. The scale of the city made her feel small, insignificant. At immigration, her passport vanished behind a glass window for a long, quiet moment. That instant marked the subtle thinning of her independence. A company driver met Maria and 3 other women, taking them to a dormitory far from the city center. 6 women shared a room with bunk beds, a posted list of strict rules on the wall. Lights out at 10, no visitors, silence mandatory. The next morning, she was driven to our sofa suites and confectionery. The factory hummed with machines. The scent of sugar and oil, thick in the air. Cakes destined for 5-star hotels, private events, and first-class airline cabins were meticulously crafted here. Maria was assigned to decoration. Her hands were steady, precise, and supervisors noticed immediately. Compliments were rare, but when they came, they carried weight. Good work, clean lines, fast. In a place where most workers were interchangeable, being noticed felt like safety. Hassan al-Rashid rarely appeared on the floor, but his presence was palpable. His photograph hung framed in the reception, alongside awards and certificates. Publicly, he was respected a businessman and philanthropist. Privately, he had multiple wives and carefully managed households. Maria first noticed him watching her hands. Their eyes met, just briefly. He gave a faint smile, and she looked away, heart racing. Attention came slowly, subtly. Extra shifts, reassignments to better teams. Casual compliments through supervisors, lunch breaks with questions about her family and background. All of it compliant with rules, yet calculated. Maria remained cautious, knowing that in Dubai, power was quiet, absolute, and unforgiving. Then came the first private meeting. Career development, he called it. In the office, he asked about her ambitions, her life back home. He spoke of discretion, loyalty, and trust. By the end, he handed her a business card, and Maria hesitated before taking it. She did. Messages followed days later. Gentle, encouraging, personal. He never pressured her. He spoke about responsibility, opportunity, sometimes about himself, but never of his wives. Their interactions moved to neutral spaces, hotel lounges, private apartments, carefully scheduled visits. Generous gifts appeared. Promises of promotion were made. Danger hovered, but attention and reassurance made it feel safe. Over time, the imbalance became clear. He controlled timing, tone, opportunities. Supervisors' attitudes shifted. Rumors spread. Maria began documenting everything: messages, schedules, incidents. And then, without warning, he stopped replying. Days passed. Work schedules changed. Overtime disappeared. When she confronted him, he said simply, "This cannot continue." No explanations, no protections, just silence. HR warned her subtly. Her visa, accommodation, attitude, everything under scrutiny. Minor infractions magnified. Advice: focus on work, avoid misunderstandings. Maria realized the truth. The system was not broken. It functioned perfectly. Women who asked questions were quietly erased. At night, she lay in the dormitory listening to other women breathe. Each had private fears, their own silent strategies. Maria understood survival required caution, documentation, and resilience. Trust was measured, attention rationed. She knew the choice before her: comply and survive quietly, or fight and risk everything. She replayed every conversation, every glance, every subtle warning. The city outside her window glowed with possibility, but the walls around her room pressed in like a cage. Her heart raced as she realized that one misstep could mean losing everything. Yet a small fire burned within her, a refusal to be silenced, a determination that would drive the next steps of her story. When a powerful man decides a woman is a problem, the system doesn't ask why. It asks how fast. Maria took a deep breath, knowing that tomorrow would demand courage she had never tested before. She had thought the silence after Hassan stopped replying would give her a moment to breathe, but the factory floor told another story. Supervisors watched her every move more carefully now, their glances sharp, almost hostile. Every mistake, even minor, was noted and amplified. Maria realized that what she had feared was not over, it had only begun. She began keeping detailed notes on her phone, documenting every change in schedule, every remark, every interaction, every message from Hassan, every reassignment, every subtle warning from HR became evidence she might need. But even as she did this, whispers followed her. Coworkers looked away, some avoiding her entirely, others with curious eyes. The walls were listening. Determined to understand the system working against her, Maria started investigating quietly. She researched labor laws for migrant workers in the UAE, visa regulations, and employment rights. The more she read, the more she realized how fragile her position truly was. The laws existed, yes, but enforcement was uneven and often favored employers. Workers like her had few protections, and complaints could trigger retaliation. One evening, she approached a colleague who had been at the factory longer. "Have you ever had problems with HR or management?" she asked cautiously. The colleague's eyes darted around before they whispered, "If you complain, they can send you home. Your visa, your job, everything can vanish. Trust no one." The warning hit Maria hard, but it also strengthened her resolve. She would not be erased without a fight. Her next step was documenting anomalies, shifts that disappeared from the schedule, assignments that were deliberately impossible, emails that were sent but never received. Every small detail built a map of how the company maintained control. It was subtle, insidious, and systematic. One day, she received a cryptic message from an unknown number. "Stop digging, or you'll regret it." Her stomach churned. The threat was clear. Yet Maria refused to back down. She backed up her notes, screenshots, and messages in multiple locations, knowing the risk of being found out. The tension in the factory escalated. Supervisors started assigning menial tasks designed to humiliate, tasks that consumed hours but added no value. At lunch, whispers and glances became more pointed. Maria felt the walls closing in. But she also saw the fear in others, the silent acknowledgement that she was walking a dangerous line for all of them. Night after night, Maria sat on her bunk, rereading labor law guidelines, visa regulations, and contracts. She mapped out potential allies, noted weak points in the company's procedures, and prepared for every contingency. The city outside continued to gleam, oblivious to the silent battles fought in its industrial shadows. Then came a meeting with HR. It was called suddenly, under the pretense of a routine check. The room was small, cold, and formal. Maria was handed a list of infractions, some minor, some exaggerated. "We are concerned about your attitude and performance," the HR manager said. "You must comply with company rules, or there will be consequences." The message was clear. One misstep, and she could lose everything. Maria left the meeting shaken but undeterred. She knew the stakes were high. She also knew that understanding the machinery of control, the laws, the HR system, the subtle intimidation was her only way to protect herself. Every message she had saved, every note she had written, every interaction she had witnessed became a thread in a tapestry of survival and resistance. At night, as she lay in the dormitory, she imagined the next steps. She envisioned conversations she would have, documents she would gather, and strategies she would deploy. She felt the weight of danger pressing down, but also the thrill of knowing she was reclaiming her power bit by bit. The investigation had begun, and there was no turning back. Every step brought her closer to understanding the full scope of the forces arrayed against her. But Maria also knew that knowledge alone would not be enough. Courage, timing, and careful execution would determine whether she could survive and emerge unbroken. When a system is designed to protect the powerful, the smallest act of defiance can be both dangerous and transformative. Maria braced herself for the battles ahead, aware that each day could bring new threats, new challenges, and new opportunities to turn the tables. And in the shadows of Dubai's glittering skyline, her quiet investigation became her rebellion. The days blurred together in the factory, each one heavier than the last. Maria could feel the pressure building around her like a tightening vice. Supervisors shadowed her movements, colleagues whispered behind her back, and every small task became a test. Yet she persisted, keeping her notes, saving messages, and quietly observing. She had begun to understand that her survival depended not only on vigilance, but on strategy. One morning, Maria noticed subtle changes in the factory floor routine. Menial tasks were assigned deliberately, consuming hours without progress. Tools she needed were missing or misplaced. The schedule shifted mysteriously. It was as if the factory itself was conspiring to make her falter. She documented everything. Every anomaly became a clue, a breadcrumb in a trail of intimidation. The threats became more direct. One evening, as she walked back to the dormitory, an unfamiliar man approached her quietly. "Be careful what you are doing," he murmured, and disappeared into the shadows. Maria's heart raced, but she did not show fear. She understood now that compliance alone would not save her. She had to be smart, prepared, and resilient. She started reaching out discreetly to other employees, seeking their experiences and understanding how the factory operated behind closed doors. Slowly, a picture emerged. Hassan had established an invisible hierarchy of control. HR, supervisors, even some workers were complicit, maintaining the image of a respectful company while silencing any dissent. Those who questioned policies, complained about work conditions, or drew attention to misconduct were quietly sidelined or threatened. Maria realized the stakes. She was not just fighting for herself. She was exposing a system that preyed on fear, vulnerability, and isolation. Every message she saved, every note she wrote, became part of an invisible record. Her nightly routine now included cross-referencing schedules, comparing messages, and predicting how the factory would try to trap her next. Then the escalation began. Anonymous threats arrived via email, texts, and even in-person warnings. Her accommodation was subtly inspected by management. Small items moved or removed, creating an unsettling sense of surveillance. She felt watched constantly. She understood the message. They could control everything, even her private space. Maria had to escalate her preparation. She created backups of all messages, copies of contracts, screenshots of schedules, and notes on every interaction. She thought about reporting to authorities, but knew that bureaucratic walls and powerful employers would likely protect Hassan. Her only power lay in her own careful documentation and cautious connections with others who might support her quietly. At work, the tension was palpable. Colleagues gave her wide berth. Supervisors' smiles were tight, their eyes calculating. Maria had learned to navigate the minefield, answering questions without oversharing, moving with precision, and maintaining the appearance of compliance while continuing her investigation. One evening, as she reviewed her notes under dim dormitory lights, she realized the pattern. The company had created a mechanism of psychological control, a combination of threats, surveillance, and isolation designed to make her doubt her own perception. But Maria had also discovered their vulnerabilities, gaps in oversight, inconsistent procedures, and moments when documentation could protect her. The climax of the tension approached when HR called her for a meeting, abruptly and without prior notice. The room was small and stark, lit by a single fluorescent bulb. The HR manager spoke of her performance, of attitude issues, of potential non-compliance with company rules. Each sentence was loaded, a veiled threat, a reminder that they controlled her work, her accommodation, even her visa. Maria remained calm, responding politely but firmly, taking mental notes of every word, every tone, every pause. That night, Maria lay awake, thinking about the road ahead. She knew she was being tested. But she also realized that understanding the machinery of intimidation gave her a measure of power. Each threat, each manipulation, each subtle coercion was recorded and cataloged in her mind and on her devices. She was building a shield out of knowledge, a weapon out of documentation. Her resolve hardened. The stakes had never been higher, and the danger had never been clearer. But Maria also knew something vital. In a system designed to silence her, she had found a way to speak, to record, and to survive. The battle was far from over, but she was no longer a passive player. She was ready to fight, carefully, strategically, and with unwavering determination. As the night deepened and the city lights twinkled beyond the dormitory window, Maria understood that the next steps would define everything. One wrong move could ruin her, but careful courage, meticulous planning, and relentless observation might allow her to outmaneuver a system built to crush anyone daring to challenge it. The investigation had evolved into a game of survival, and Maria was determined to win. Part 3 is now fully written as a continuous narration script, ready for TTs. It expands Maria's story into intensifying threats, psychological manipulation, and her meticulous preparation to survive the factory system, keeping cinematic tension. Next, we can proceed to Part 4, where the story reaches its climax, the confrontation, possible disappearance. and resolution of her struggle. Shall I continue with part 4 now? The tension that had built over weeks in the factory finally reached its peak. Maria had become hyper-aware of every sound, every glance, every subtle shift in the environment. The threats had grown more explicit, yet she remained determined, documenting everything, planning each step with precision. The walls around her seemed to close in, but her resolve only hardened. One morning, she noticed that her work schedule had been completely altered without explanation. Tasks were doubled, hours extended, and the machinery she relied on was malfunctioning or unavailable. It was a clear signal. They wanted her to fail, to create a reason to dismiss her. Maria remained calm, noting every detail, knowing that each irregularity was proof of deliberate manipulation. Her investigation had revealed more than she imagined. Hassan's control extended beyond the factory. HR supervisors. Even some co-workers were complicit in maintaining the oppressive structure. Anonymous messages continued to warn her. Subtle inspections of her dorm room created unease. And every day brought a new psychological test. Yet Maria had learned to navigate these challenges, combining caution with strategic observation. Then came a critical meeting. The HR manager called her into the office under the guise of a routine evaluation. The room was cold, lit harshly, and each word from the manager carried implied consequences. Maria listened carefully, recording each statement mentally, noting inconsistencies and veiled threats. The message was clear. Her position, her visa, and her safety were all under scrutiny. Yet Maria remained composed, asking precise questions and responding with measured politeness, never revealing the full scope of her investigation. At night, she reviewed her documentation. Screenshots, notes, schedules, messages all meticulously organized. She began planning her next move, weighing risks and potential outcomes. She knew that any wrong step could lead to her deportation or worse. But she also realized that knowledge was her greatest weapon. The system that had tried to erase her could be exposed, piece by piece, if she remained vigilant and strategic. Maria also started reaching out quietly to allies outside the factory, friends, former colleagues, and legal advisors, testing waters, gathering advice, and seeking ways to protect herself without drawing immediate attention. Each connection was a lifeline, each conversation a thread in a safety net she carefully wove. The pressure mounted, but so did her confidence. She recognized patterns, predicted behaviors, and had rehearsed responses for every scenario. She became a master of her own story, reclaiming agency from those who sought to control her. Each day of observation, each note, each careful action reinforced her resilience. Finally, the day came when Maria confronted the culmination of all her work. She had compiled enough documentation to create a comprehensive record of the threats, manipulations, and systemic abuses. The culmination was not a dramatic showdown in a single moment, but a calculated release of information, a careful exposure designed to protect herself while revealing the truth. The stakes were immense, but her preparation made the difference. As she took the first step toward sharing the story, Maria reflected on the journey from a hopeful young woman seeking opportunity, to a worker navigating an oppressive system, to an investigator of her own circumstances. She realized that survival was not just about compliance, but about courage, strategy, and relentless determination. The city outside continued to shine with luxury and illusion, but inside, Maria had carved a space of power, awareness, and resilience. The system that had sought to silence her had underestimated her vigilance. She had learned to speak without words, to record without being seen, and to persist despite the threats. Maria's story did not end with fear or submission. It ended with a quiet triumph, the reclamation of her voice, the preservation of her agency, and the exposure of a system that preyed on the vulnerable. In the shadows of Dubai's glittering skyline, her rebellion had been both subtle and powerful, a testament to the strength of a woman who refused to be erased.